Oh, I love being a grandmother because you don't have any responsibilities. It's wonderful. I was close to my mother, yes. She was lovely. She was lovely. And she was beautiful. She came from New Jersey. She came from a very warm, big family. She was one of 6 children. And she came up to Boston. Well, she met my father through friends. She was at a house party of boarding school girls. They'd all gone to the same school. And one of them had a house party in Haverhill. And Mother came up from New Jersey for this house party. And my father had been to Harvard. And some Harvard boys, graduates of Harvard, came down to this house party. And that's when he met my mother. And my grandmother, his mother, says, your father met your mother on Sunday and couldn't understand why they couldn't be married on Tuesday. I've always, thought of that. 21, so in the early 20s, people came formally dressed to dinner parties on Saturday evening. The men wore tuxedos and the ladies wore long gowns. During the cocktail hour, I was brought in by my nursemaid to be shown off to the guests. And my father said to me, "Would you please tell these ladies and gentlemen what I make?" Naturally, he expected me to say shoes. I said, "Daddy makes cocktails." That I remember very distinctly. I mean, I don't remember doing it. I remember my mother and father telling me this. So the only time that I can ever remember doing something and having my mother and father feeling sorry for me was one Halloween when I went out with my friends and we cut clothes. Back in those days, we were destructive. We cut clotheslines because people didn't have dryers in those days. They had clotheslines, and they'd hang the wash outdoors. And I can remember we cut some clothesline, and we chalked something, and the lady of the house caught us, and she really was mad, and I don't blame her, but she was really mad, and we came back to my house. And my mother and father were very sympathetic to us, so they understood that Halloween is for kids. That I do remember. Well, my first wedding, my family had a big wedding. It was really their party. We were married in Trinity Church in Newton Center, and the reception was at Braeburn Country Club, a private club in West Newton. It was an evening wedding. I was married at 8 o'clock at night. Oh, there were lots of people there, lots of people there. My son was born on Long Island, and we lived very happily in a house that his father and I built right after World War II in a town called Lake Success, a residential town. And my husband stayed in the Air Force Reserve, so that certain weekends he had to go to Mitchell Air Force Base. Well, in early January 16th to be exact, my husband wanted to get a consecutive weekend free so we could do whatever. And so he traded flights with somebody else in the squadron. And they went up to Greenland and picked up whatever, delivered whatever. And coming back, they were to land in Gander, the city that we had landed in when we came over from Nova Scotia in the boat. And it was very, very windy that night, very windy. And they crashed. They hit a hill or a mountain or something, I guess. It was very difficult for me to tell my son that his father was no longer living. And as I look back on it, I should have done it right away, but I didn't. He was not quite 4. He was, well, no, he was actually 4. So he's playing with one of his Texas cousins who knows, everything. And she told him, which, is very bad on my part. My mother-in-law kept saying to me, you've got to tell him, you've got to tell him. But I didn't know how to do it. I was a widow living in Wellesley, and a friend of mine was invited to a very special cocktail party after the Harvard-Yale football game. The hostess said to my friend, I have a gentleman who's recently widowed, and I would love to be able to introduce him to somebody. And my friend said, I have just the person. So I was invited to accompany my friend and her husband to this cocktail party in a lovely home in Wellesley. And when I got there, I didn't know one soul in the room except the friends that brought me. But I was wandering around having a good time. And in the meantime, unbeknownst to me, it was a setup with a widower who was also at the party. And the widower's friends were trying to push him towards me in the room, and my friend is trying to push him towards me in the room. Well, we chatted a bit, but not to any great extent. And very handsome man, very handsome man. And so anyhow, the next day I said to the hostess, it was a lovely party, and as far as your widower friend, I'll probably never hear from him again. I never heard from him for about a month, but he was out of town on business. I didn't know that. All of a sudden, because the cocktail party was the end of October or early November, all of a sudden in early December, I received a telephone call. My son is sitting at the kitchen table with his feet in a bucket of special water because he had plantar warts on the sole of his feet, doing his homework. And I'm sitting there polishing my fingernails, and the phone rings. And it was Bob, and he said, you, I hope, are coming with me to a Christmas cocktail party. I said, oh, that would be very nice. But I said, I don't think I can do it because I'm going to my cousin's wedding in Andover this afternoon. And he said, well, that's all right. We don't have to be there at any special time. I said, fine. So I went to the wedding. I went to the reception. My mother said to me, you can't leave until she cuts the cake. I thought she'd never cut the cake, but it finally happened. And I tore home from Andover to Wellesley, changed my clothes, and went to this Christmas cocktail party. That was the beginning. It ended with 49 years of marriage. The second wedding was a mess. My family really did not want me to marry Bob Hudsey. It wasn't anything personal, but they felt that for me to take on 3 children, they were very concerned about that. And it's so interesting because, my family was so opposed to this, and yet my son is gone, and I have these other 3 children. Well, anyhow, we survived, and the thing that I remember when I was first married the second time was the laundry and the cooking. The laundry was overwhelming because I went from a family of two for several years to a family of six. And I do remember that. And the cooking, I got used to. It was boring. I can't say that the meals were that great, but I did the best I could. So we survived. Well, eventually, when Herb finished junior high school, I wanted him to go to a prep school. He really didn't want to go. He wanted to go in at the end of ninth grade. He wanted to go to Wellesley High School. But my father, who was very close to him and very helpful, prevailed upon him to look at prep schools. And among others, we went up to Deerfield Academy. And he was so bad at the interview that I knew he'd never be accepted. So we came home, and we felt, my father and I, that was the school for him, because not only was it rated well scholastically, and Dr. Boyden, the old headmaster, was still there, but it had wonderful athletic facilities. So we prevailed upon Deerfield to give him another interview, and he behaved himself and was accepted and went to Deerfield for 3 years. So then it came time for college, and he applied to Stanford, was accepted right away, and so he went to Stanford for 4 years, joined a fraternity, made lots of nice friends. And at the end of 4 years, he decided he wanted to go to the business school. So he applied to both Harvard and Stanford Business School, straight out of college. And he received on his business boards a perfect score, they tell me. So I wanted him to come east and go to Harvard. I said, if you, having had Stanford on the West Coast and Harvard on the East Coast, then tell me that you want to live in California. That makes more sense. So he just stayed in California, and eventually met a young lady and married her. I went out to the wedding. It was they were married in the Stanford Chapel. And that marriage lasted 6 years. The marriage dissolved because she fell in love with the Stanford tennis coach. She left. So he was alone in Mountain View for, I don't know, a year or two. And then he met my daughter-in-law, Deborah. And Deborah had a little boy. When Herb and Deborah married, David was 5. I did not go out to the wedding. At that time, there was just a lot of friction. So eventually, the 3 of them came east and stayed with us in Topsfield. We were living in Topsfield then. And they left David for a week with Bob and me. The kids were, the boys, the other 2 boys were, out of the house, grown up, and Deborah was in college. And they left, so there was no one at the house except Bob and me in Topsfield. Well, anyhow, they left David with us for a week while they went on vacation. And we just had a ball. I'd never seen this child before. I had a friend who had a swimming pool, and David was even at that age. In California, I swear, they throw them in the pools at the age of 2 weeks. Well, not really, but anyhow, so he was 7 years old, he was a nice swimmer. So then Amber was born in California, and she's been a handful. She's been a handful ever since she was born, and very close to her father, very, very close to her father. She had difficulties with her mother because her father spoiled her, her mother didn't. And I'm so happy because now they're extremely close. She relies on her mother for advice and all kinds of things, even at the age of 33. So I don't know what else to say. My contemporaries, the few that are left, and I think we had the best. You know, Tom Brokaw wrote The Greatest Generation. And that's my generation.